Well, a hearty shalom to you, Jeffrey Seif here, and glad you're there. It's wonderful to sit down with you and take a look at the book. We are this year walking through the Acts of the Apostles, so-called. I don't know if I'll get through it all in a year, to tell you the truth. So much good stuff. And I was glad to work through the Torah portions with you. That is so very foundational. But I'm glad to take a look at the other side of the book too, that is the Newer Testament, and to look at the story of the Gospel's expansion beyond Judea to the othermost parts of the world. And against that backdrop, we're looking at Paul's biographer who really wrote the story. It's known as the Acts of the Apostles, but principally, though not exclusively, the literature is going to get us to and through the Acts of the Apostle Paul. He's really introduced into the narrative as the one who's the principal harbinger to take the story global, take it out, if you will. Well, we'll get to his appointment later. We're looking at a new one now in chapter 1, verses 12 through the end of the chapter, verse 26. I have to squint when I look at it. I'm really glad that the larger print edition of the Tree of Life version is coming out. It's great for old folk like me. Old, I'm 62, and it's harder to get that, it's harder to read the small print at my age, so I'm glad we're coming out with it. In any case, in chapter 12 to the end, it begins with a beautiful story of, subsequent to the Lord's ascension, the apostles reconvene, and they have a time in prayer, we're told. In verse 16, with one mind they continued together in prayer. Of course, these days are amazing by anyone's estimation. Certainly, if you think of the drama and the trauma of Yeshua's his crucifixion, their disappointing response to it, his resurrection, his roping them back in, his spending time with them, his personally tutoring them. There must have been a lot of awe and wonder here, and now he just kind of floats away and commissions them to wait in Jerusalem, and they are going to receive the gift of the Holy Spirit, and they're praying, waiting for this breakthrough. We're told they continued together in prayer, along with the women and Miriam, Yeshua's mother, and his brothers. Looks like his family members now are a little more friendly. Mary was always there. His brothers vacillated in their enthusiasms for what he was all about. But after all this, it looks like the brothers are on board. Sometimes you got to be a little patient, with the family. They pray together, and Peter then steps up. We're told in verse 15, in those days, Peter stood up among the brothers and sisters, and he's going to give voice to the fact that subsequent to Judas' demise, Judas Ishkariot. Ish is the word for man. Kariot is a village outside of Jerusalem. Judas was the only non-Galilean in the troop, in that group of 12. He was an outsider in more ways than one. Peter gives voice to the fact that we, in the wake of praying about this, I would imagine, and other things, the unction comes that we need to fill that slot now. And they look for individuals of repute. And I want you to look with me, please, in verse 21, in deciding who's going to fill that. Therefore, one of the men, so they don't know who's going to be that new 12th apostle. And who's going to get the promotion? That's how I want to frame this. Who's going to get the great job? A lot of us are looking for promotion. We wish others would see how cool we really are, and we could get rewarded accordingly with the status that goes along with that, plus never mind the financial gains, perhaps. People are looking to bump up in life. Well, here's the ultimate bump, if you will, in a religious sense, being promoted up to the front office. And I want to look here at the kind of person that gets the promotion. I mean, certainly it applies particularly to filling the apostolic slot, but there's some things in here that speak to those of us that are looking to kind of move it up in life a little bit. We're told, therefore, one of the men who have accompanied us all the time, that the Lord Yeshua went in and out among us. In other words, we're looking, who's going to be the next apostle? They're looking for someone, one of the men who have accompanied us all the time that the Lord Yeshua went in and out among us. I'm going to return to that. Beginning with his immersion by John, his baptism, and the day he was taken up from us, must become a witness with us to his resurrection. Who is it that's going to be bumped up? We come up with parameters here. And what works its way into the requirement here is just so important. It's someone, a man who's accompanied us all the time. Just wanted to stop there for a second. Someone who's been with us without the title, without the pomp, without the prestige. Someone, you have where Yeshua gathers together, there's the 12, and there's the inner circle of the 12, the Peter, James, and John, and then there's the outer circle. Well, they're getting the recognition as the apostles, but then there's people beyond that sphere that aren't getting noticed, they're not getting recognized, they're not getting service, but they're serving. They're serving. When a slot is vacated, we don't put out a resume for, it's so much like this in congregational work too. There's a vacancy. We need a new children's minister or youth minister or whatever it is. And you don't necessarily look for someone who has a PhD in children's ministry or whatever, that you look for who's been faithful, who's been there, who's been serving all the while, who's really part of the team. If someone who's a faithful team member goes off and gets some education and they come back, all the better. But at the end of the day, what moves people forward in life is less about the resume than it is what people have to say about them by virtue of them being in the trenches with them for quite some time before they get the call to move up to the home office. That's really what's at play here. We're looking for a faithful man. We're looking for someone who, in effect, is already acting in this capacity. They've been there, they've walked it, they're in the trenches, but without the title. That really is what you look for. Individuals that just donate it out. They just give it out of something internal to them that prompts them. I understand that to be the beckoning of the Lord. They just give it up. And in return for that, later on, they get recognized in their own day. Now, we don't know. At one level, this book is called The Acts of the Apostles. I really wish there was such a book, because I'd really like to know the ins and outs of all of their lives. And I really don't. It's kind of relegated to ancillary literature. It's beyond the pale of biblical literature. Different sources offer a telling of what the lives of all of these men were all about. And I really don't know to what extent, I can't lean into that, but give that the kind of credence that I do the biblical testimony. I wish I really could get a window into what they were all about. We really know very little. We know very little about the life of Jesus at the end of the day. He's just out and about for a short period of time, and you can read through his writings reasonably quickly. I mean, it's just a rough sketch. John says were all the things he said and did to be written down. The world itself couldn't contain the books. I mean, that's his way of saying there's a lot of stuff. This is just some of it. When we're looking at these who followed Yeshua, who advocated for him subsequent to his death, burial, and resurrection, we just get a really brief sketch. I wish I knew what their lives are all about. But one thing I do know from the literature is, if you look at the text, there's a premium placed on faithful, serving men and women before they ever get the call up to something special. And I want you to take that to heart. I found it to be true in my own life and circumstances. Honestly, I have, and this comes from 62 years of living and walking with the Lord and serving in various venues, as I have. Both secular and religious. I found that by serving, that by donating, by giving to something, steadily and faithfully, you wind up endearing yourself to the people that make major decisions about things. And usually that bodes well for the individual who's the giver. And I want you to take that with you as you make your journey through life, because it is so very true. Well, we're told that these parameters are established and a few men are put forth, and then we're looking for the Lord to somehow verify who it is that's going to be the one specifically. And we get that in verse 26. And Matthias then was added to the 11 emissaries, and we rounded off to the number 12. Well, speaking of numbers, I've just given a little walkthrough in brief for the first chapter in 2 sections, and we'll carry on same time, same station next week as we consider issues in the book Acts, and as we particularly take note of how it was, in fact, that the gospel expanded beyond Israel's borders. God bless you. I will see you same time, same station in a week.